I died and got bound to a system. The system gave me my first task, to win over the possessive male lead. It was a dark and windy night, perfect for some mischief. I was sitting in front of my computer, browsing through some pure romance literature. The author's writing was so vivid that it made my mouth dry. Just as I reached for my cup, my hand shook, and before I knew it, I was gone. My last thought was, if someone finds my body with this web page still open, won't I become a legend? When I regained consciousness, I felt a chill all over my body. I reached down with my hand. Huh? Bars? I opened my eyes and looked around. I was locked in a dog cage.
Hello, host! I am 007, a cute quick transmigration system.
Before I could fully process the reality of being locked in a dog cage, a macho voice cooed in my ear.
Host, you can't see me. I'm just a set of codes. You died in your original world.
I caught the key point. I hadn't come back to life, I was truly gone. So where was I? Heaven?
Don't worry, host. As long as you complete the tasks and accumulate enough points, you can return to your previous world.
I frowned. Yes, I was desperate to go back. My webpage was still open. My reputation couldn't be ruined over a cup of water. I immediately agreed to 007's proposal and asked what my task was.
Initiating the possessive male lead strategy plan.
007's macho voice announced, followed by a flood of memories that weren't mine. James? The images flashed through my mind, making me swallow hard. The vivid experience left me feeling cold all over. James was the possessive male lead I needed to win over, but our relationship was complicated. He was the feared tyrant of City A, and I was the driver who he mistakenly thought had hit him and fled. Before the accident, he was a gentle young master. After the accident, with his leg broken, James turned into a terrifying figure. And as fate would have it, the person who hit James wasn't me but my own sister. Now, she was living a carefree life after plastic surgery, while I was mistaken for the culprit and captured by James. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of a wheelchair rolling on the floor grew louder. I shrank back in fear, the chains on my wrists clinking. I winced in pain. I cautiously lifted my head to get a glimpse of the possessive male lead. I was stunned. The hall lights suddenly turned on, and the blinding white light shone down. I instinctively raised my hand to shield my eyes, scraping my wrist in the process. Through the gaps between my fingers, I saw Henry sitting in a wheelchair, dressed in a black shirt. He was clad in black, his skin pale and translucent. His tie was half loosened, revealing his enticing collarbone. His eyes were slightly red, with a tear mole beneath one eye. My mom always said that people with tear moles were often unlucky. I thought about it. James was indeed pitiful, but at that moment, I was even more so. I put on a vulnerable expression, hoping to evoke some pity from the man in front of me. But this man wasn't ordinary, he had no heart. With his hands crossed on his lap, he looked cold and dignified. If it weren't for the murderous intent in his eyes, I might have enjoyed admiring this sickly beauty. But I wanted to live. From the outside, I must have looked like a delicate canary in that cage, with tattered clothes and bruises all over. When our eyes met, Henry seemed momentarily dazed. Those eyes were clear and innocent, with long lashes trembling in fear, giving off a sense of vulnerability and grievance. Big brother, can you save me? I've been locked up by bad people. My voice was hoarse from not drinking water for a long time. The man in the wheelchair paused and looked at me with a hint of amusement.
Please, kind brother.
I saw James raise an eyebrow, unsure of what he was thinking.
Kind brother?
I shrank back. His eyes were sharp, as if they could uncover all my secrets. Slowly, I moved closer, lifting my left hand, which was shackled with a heavy iron ring, and tugged at his pant leg.
Kind brother.
Mustering all my courage, my voice was much louder than before. James stared at my hand clutching his pant leg. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I didn't know how long it had been, but just as I thought my hand would break, he moved.
This is the first time someone has called me kind.
His pale lips curved slightly. With such a capricious yandere, I felt uncertain.
Do you know who I am?
James leaned forward, gripping my chin tightly. It must be bruised, I thought, my eyes welling up with tears from the pain. I bit my lower lip, my eyes innocent and my voice soft.
Who are you, big brother?
James suddenly laughed, a smile that could make the world lose its color. He had a beautiful smile, I thought, as his thin lips moved, enunciating each word.
James, your fiancé.
He must have expected me to panic, but I simply tilted my head and blinked, still smiling.
So you're my fiancé. Big brother, you're so handsome. I really like you.
I smiled with crescent-shaped eyes, secretly observing his reaction.
James, can you let me out?
James glanced at the two men in black, who understood and opened my cage. My wrists and ankles were finally free. I stood up shakily, feeling dizzy and my vision darkening. I didn't know how long the original owner had gone without food. Thud! I fell to the ground, my hands barely supporting me to avoid looking too pathetic. My scraped wrists started bleeding again. I didn't know what James was thinking as he extended his hand to me. Surprised, I looked up at him. He raised an eyebrow, and I felt he was about to withdraw his hand, so I quickly placed my small hand in his. Ouch! The pain brought tears to my eyes. James showed no mercy, pulling me up from the ground and causing me to fall into his arms. Our eyes met, my tear-filled gaze locked with his deep, unreadable eyes. I swallowed hard, feeling weak-kneed from James's beauty.
Do you find me attractive?
His thin lips moved, and my muddled brain responded instinctively.
Yes.
When I realized what I had said, I feared he would throw me to the ground again, but I saw a playful smile on his lips.
At least you're honest.
I was stunned, not expecting James to react this way. My stomach growled at an inopportune moment, and James's expression turned curious.
Haven't you eaten?
No.
I shook my head obediently. I was just Rose's illegitimate child, a singer's daughter. My mother was now in the hospital, and the Rose family didn't acknowledge me. If it weren't for James demanding me from Rose, she might not even know she had a daughter.
I met my father for the first time, and he said he would take me to dinner.
I left my sentence unfinished. As for my background, James could find out if he wanted to. Hopefully, he would uncover the truth about what happened back then. James looked at me, seemingly weighing the truth of my words. I stared at him earnestly, trying to convey my sincerity with my clear, innocent eyes. After a few seconds, which felt like an eternity, he nodded and ordered some food for me. He held me as I sat at the dining table. I struggled to get down, but he kept me locked in his embrace.
Be good.
James's voice always carried a hint of allure, making it hard to resist. I gave in, feeling like a caged bird under his care. He fed me, his gaze traveling from my eyes to my neck, and finally to my legs.
Such beautiful legs, it would be a shame if they were broken.
The millet porridge in my mouth became hard to swallow. My eyes filled with fear, but I knew I had to stay calm. With his temperament, the more scared I was, the more excited he would become. Who knew if the next moment I'd have to say goodbye to my legs and end up like him, crippled. I slowly swallowed the porridge and said crisply,
I'll protect my legs. I know Big Brother's legs aren't well, and I promised my father to be your legs.
I saw a momentary daze in James's eyes, followed by a smile. His gaze was probing.
You want to be my legs?
Yes, I want to be James's legs.
Suddenly, his large hand wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer. Our breaths mingled.
How will you be my legs?
His hand was cold, and the tattered dress made my waist and his hand touch intimately. My body was sensitive, my face and body turning red, my legs growing weak. James noticed my reaction, a mischievous smile on his lips.
Whatever Big Brother wants me to do, I'll do.
I lowered my head, avoiding his gaze. After a moment, he let out a cold snort and carried me into the room. When I regained consciousness, I felt a chill all over my body. I reached down with my hand.
Huh? Bars?
I opened my eyes and looked around. I was locked in a dog cage.
Hello, host. I am 007, Acute Quick Transmigration System.
Before I could fully process the reality of being locked in a dog cage, a macho voice cooed in my ear. I became alert. The macho voice seemed to sense my unease and explained further.
Host, you can't see me. I'm just a set of codes. You died in your original world.
I caught the key point. I hadn't come back to life, I was truly dead. So where was I? Heaven?
Don't worry, host. As long as you complete the tasks and accumulate enough points, you can return to your previous world.
I frowned. Yes, I was desperate to go back. My webpage was still open. My reputation couldn't be ruined over a cup of water.
All right, what's my task?
Initiating the Yandere Male Lead Strategy Plan.
007's macho voice announced, followed by a flood of memories that weren't mine.
James?
The images flashed through my mind, making me swallow hard. The vivid experience left me feeling cold all over. James was the Yandere male lead I needed to win over, but our relationship was complicated. He was the feared tyrant of City A, and I was the driver who he mistakenly thought had hit him and fled. Before the accident, he was a gentle young master. After the accident, with his leg broken, James turned into a terrifying figure. And as fate would have it, the person who hit James wasn't me but my own sister. Now, she was living a carefree life after plastic surgery, while I was mistaken for the culprit and captured by James. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of a wheelchair rolling on the floor grew louder. I shrank back in fear, the chains on my wrists clinking. I winced in pain. I cautiously lifted my head to get a glimpse of the Yandere male lead. I was stunned. The hall lights suddenly turned on, and the blinding white light shone down. I instinctively raised my hand to shield my eyes, scraping my wrist in the process. Through the gaps between my fingers, I saw Henry sitting in a wheelchair, dressed in a black shirt. He was clad in black, his skin pale and translucent. His tie was half loosened, revealing his enticing collarbone. His eyes were slightly red, with a tear mole beneath one eye.
Big Brother, can you save me? I've been locked up by bad people.
My voice was hoarse from not drinking water for a long time. The man in the wheelchair paused and looked at me with a hint of amusement. The butler came over to rescue me and took me to a guest room.
Mr. James arranged for you to stay here.
I looked at the room, much smaller than James's, and sighed.
Sigh, another day of wanting to sleep with James.
James was actually quite nice. I thought so while sitting on his lap. Why was I sitting on his lap? James had offended many people. Just yesterday, I was in the office reading a magazine when suddenly, the door was kicked open by a middle-aged man who looked decent. Without a word, he rushed at James with a knife. I was ready to watch the show, but the usually absent system suddenly appeared and pushed me onto James. Luckily, I dodged quickly. The knife missed his heart by just 2 centimeters. It was the first time I saw the sickly beauty panicked. Thinking about it, I placed my hand on James's face. I must have looked like a fragile doll.
Brother James, will I not be able to take care of you anymore?
With every word, I felt blood spurting from the wound on my back.
You're so ugly.
I was speechless. I was in so much pain, couldn't I have a bit of an exaggerated expression? The security guards came and subdued the middle-aged man. I clearly heard him cursing James, which made me happy. But then my ears started ringing, and my vision blurred. I was scared. Had the knife hit a nerve? Would I become disabled?
James.
I screamed in fear, calling James's name. After all, he was the only person I knew in this world. I called his name, hoping he would remember the debt of 21 plates and save me, then let me repay the debt. Yes, he had noted down every plate I broke that night and made me wash them, saying it was a waste of money.
James.
I didn't know how long it took before I woke up from the darkness. When I opened my eyes, it was still dark.
I'm blind.
I cried even louder. I, a beautiful young girl, had become blind to save a man.
Are you summoning spirits?
It was James. I was so happy I tried to get out of bed, but my hand was still attached to an 4.
Don't move.
James came to my bedside and held my hand. I clung to his hand like a lifeline. I felt him stiffen, then he gently patted my back.
James, I'm blind. If I'm blind, will you abandon me? Never mind, even if you marry another wife, it's okay.
I rambled on, not noticing the complicated look on the man's face in the darkness.
It's nighttime.
I froze.
James, I want to eat the pastries made by Master Joe from the east side of the city, peach crisps, egg yolk pastries, lotus flower pastries.
I babbled on, watching James's sympathetic expression slowly turn dark. For the sake of my life, I stopped talking, successfully saying goodbye to the honey bread and chestnut cakes I hadn't yet met.
Is that all?
James asked again when I stopped talking. Could I say there was more? I couldn't. With an innocent look that James liked, I nodded.
If possible, I'd also like some canned peaches.
I'm a patient now, so I get to make demands. James nodded. But recently, he had been acting strange, personally attending to everything about me. The system secretly told me that James was starting to doubt the events of that year. She was a simple girl willing to get hurt for him. How could she have hit someone and fled the scene? Besides, I couldn't even drive at that time. I looked at James's back and smiled.
See, even the big bad wolf can be charmed by the innocence of a little white rabbit. But what the big bad wolf doesn't know is that the little white rabbit's bite can be very painful.
My foolish father and sister were truly brainless. At the time of the accident, I was only 13 and a half, not even tall enough to reach the pedals.
There's no point in dwelling on it. You secretly helped James find out the truth about that year.
The system wasn't good for much, but it could hack into other people's computers. I entrusted this small task to the system and started munching on the apple slices James had brought, waiting for him to return.
How's the investigation going?
James asked, sitting in the car, holding a report, and questioning the secretary in the passenger seat. The secretary immediately reported the findings. The secretary fell silent. James's eyes turned cold, and he let out a sneer, looking terrifying.
Does the White family think I'm a fool?
James's tone was filled with obvious anger. Thinking about the foolish things he did to Emily when he first met her made his heart ache. James's slender, long, and well-defined hand clenched tightly. His brows furrowed with hostility.
Cut off all cooperation with the White family. Announce it. The James family will blacklist the White family.
James acted swiftly. The White family's small business was never on his radar. James returned with a full load. The bodyguards behind him were carrying bags full of items.
Brother James, this is too much. If I eat all this, I'll become a little piggy.
My expression must have been too comical because even the usually stern James had a hint of a smile in his eyes, and the curve of his lips was unmistakable.
Eat. I can afford to raise a pig.
Fine, just ignore what I said.
I was stumped, cursing James in my heart. James looked at me with a playful gaze, which was a bit creepy. I shivered and rummaged through the plastic bags and boxes for something I wanted to eat.
Do you want a bite?
I had already taken a bite and was just asking out of courtesy. I knew he had a cleanliness obsession and wouldn't use a spoon I had used. To my surprise, the next second, he put his mouth on my spoon. I was stunned.
I used that.
It's quite sweet.
James looked at me. I swallowed. His gaze was too strange, making my face hot and my heartbeat irregular.
What a charmer.
I cursed inwardly, staring at James's beauty in a daze.
Do I look good?
I watched James's Adam's apple move up and down. Before I could lift my gaze, my lips were enveloped in a warm, soft kiss. He was clearly inexperienced, biting me painfully. Before I could cry out in pain, James pressed on. James might have a problem with his leg, but everything else seemed to work just fine. He held me in his arms, and the sensation of something hard beneath me was unmistakable. I swear I didn't do anything. James made the first move. James's eyes were filled with desire, and to be honest, I was a bit scared.
Don't look at me.
His gaze made me uncomfortable. As a young girl, it was normal to feel shy. I lowered my head, trying to act like an ostrich, not daring to look at him. A soft laugh came from above. James's arms tightened around me, holding me close. I was really afraid I might hurt his precious leg. Just as I was about to push him away, I heard his usually cold voice turn deep and magnetic.
Don't move.
I didn't dare move, staying perfectly still. James's gaze was full of affection.
I've been busy these days. Take care of yourself while I'm not around.
James buried his head in my neck. I nodded, knowing he was preparing to deal with Rose's bizarre family. Finally, my name would be cleared. I had no fondness for my half-sister Lily. What kind of person sells out their sister to take the blame? James held me for a while, then kissed the corner of my mouth before putting me on the bed and leaving. After he left, James stood at the door, his gaze turning icy.
Acquire the White Corporation.
It was nothing more than investigating the truth of the past, and in the process, he discovered my experiences. The original me and my mother were abandoned by Rose to fend for ourselves. The original me had a talent for art. To support my art studies, my mother sold everything she had and worked 3 jobs, which left her with health issues. Just when we thought we had made it, Rose kidnapped my younger sister back. That was the final blow, and my mother fell seriously ill.
Mr. James, there's a woman outside who claims to be Miss Daisy.
James was sitting at his desk, sorting through information about Emily, feeling a pang in his heart. Hearing the name Miss Daisy, his eyebrows raised, and his demeanor grew colder.
Oh. Let her in.
Daisy truly lived up to her name. Her face had undergone so many procedures that there was no resemblance to me at all. James crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair, looking at the eldest daughter of the White family with interest. I had to admit, in terms of figure, I was no match for her. But James wasn't a superficial person. He looked at Daisy with amusement because she was imitating my style. Why would someone with such a figure dress in a hot style, only to mimic my homeless look? She wore a black oversized t-shirt and wide-legged jeans. However, the White family was a bit slow on the uptake. Recently, James had been treating me like a little princess, dressing me in puffy skirts and little dresses, playing dress-up with me every day. He liked it, and I was happy too. After all, what woman doesn't like to dress up? Now, looking at Daisy imitating my old look, it was somewhat off and awkward.
Miss Daisy, how have you become so much uglier in just a few days?
I wasn't there, but I could imagine Daisy's cracked expression. It must have been like she had eaten something unpleasant. When had the high and mighty Miss Daisy of the White family ever suffered such a loss? James told me about it, and I asked him why Daisy had come to see him.
Why did Daisy come to see you?
James smiled at me, then stole a kiss from the corner of my mouth before continuing.
Your sister wants to climb into my bed.
Did you agree?
I looked at James coldly. This dog of a man better not have lost his mind over a big-chested woman and dug himself into a hole again. It had nothing to do with me, but I felt a lump in my throat.
Jealous?
A little bit, not just a little bit, quite a lot.
By the time I realized what I had said, it was too late. I covered my mouth in disbelief. How had I become so silly while pretending to be innocent? I saw James lower his head and laugh, and for a moment, my heart skipped a beat. That smile was enough to topple cities and nations. My lustful instincts made me swallow hard, feeling a bit dazed.
Damn, he's good looking.
What did you say?
My voice was too soft, and James didn't hear it, but my lecherous gaze hadn't been retracted, and I met his cold, questioning eyes. It was a dark and windy night, perfect for some mischief. I was sitting in front of my computer, browsing through some pure romance literature. Just as I reached for my cup, my hand shook, and before I knew it, I was gone. My last thought was, if someone finds my body with this web page still open, won't I become a legend? When I regained consciousness, I felt a chill all over my body. I reached down with my hand.
Huh? Bars?
I opened my eyes and looked around. I was locked in a dog cage.
Hello, host. I am 007, Acute Quick Transmigration System.
Before I could fully process the reality of being locked in a dog cage, a macho voice cooed in my ear.
Host, you can't see me. I'm just a set of codes. You died in your original world.
So where am I? Heaven?
Don't worry, host. As long as you complete the tasks and accumulate enough points, you can return to your previous world.
I frowned. Yes, I was desperate to go back. My webpage was still open. My reputation couldn't be ruined over a cup of water.
What's my task?
Initiating the Yandere Male Lead Strategy Plan.
007's macho voice announced, followed by a flood of memories that weren't mine.
James?
The images flashed through my mind, making me swallow hard. The vivid experience left me feeling cold all over. James was the Yandere male lead I needed to win over, but our relationship was complicated. He was the feared tyrant of City A, and I was the driver who he mistakenly thought had hit him and fled.
Tap, tap, tap.
The sound of a wheelchair rolling on the floor grew louder. I shrank back in fear, the chains on my wrists clinking. I winced in pain.
Who's there?
I cautiously lifted my head to get a glimpse of the Yandere male lead. The hall lights suddenly turned on, and the blinding white light shone down. I instinctively raised my hand to shield my eyes, scraping my wrist in the process. Through the gaps between my fingers, I saw Henry sitting in a wheelchair, dressed in a black shirt.
Big brother, can you save me? I've been locked up by bad people.
My voice was hoarse from not drinking water for a long time. The man in the wheelchair paused and looked at me with a hint of amusement. Daisy was truly detestable. The online outcry had turned her into a pariah. I heard she got pelted with rotten eggs when she went out a few days ago. The White family's company had collapsed, and Rose and his beloved daughter Daisy were left with nothing. Today, James had some business to attend to and, worried I might get bored, told me to go shopping. This was actually my first time in this world to leisurely experience it, without tasks or James. The most exciting part was that I had never been a rich girl before, and James's black card fulfilled my second lifelong wish. The first was to be surrounded by handsome men, and the second was to have enough money to spend. Wearing the latest sunglasses from a certain designer and high heels from another, I felt like I was on a runway. High heels were truly sinful. They looked great but were incredibly tiring. To give my feet a break, I entered a cafe. It wasn't a holiday, so there weren't many people. I chose a shaded corner seat. James's video call came through. I missed him after just a short while, so I answered immediately. I adjusted my hair in front of the camera and started showing off my shopping haul to James.
Look, look. Aren't my new nails pretty? They're pink and sparkly.
I was so engrossed in my conversation with James that I didn't notice the venomous snake lurking in the shadows, its eyes filled with hatred.
Look.
Before I could finish my sentence, I felt a cold sensation in my abdomen. The blade's reflection caught the sunlight, blinding me.
Emily!
I heard James's heart-wrenching scream through the screen. I wanted to tell him I was fine, but my surroundings became chaotic, my vision swayed and blurred, and a sense of powerlessness spread from my toes to my entire body. I couldn't muster any strength. My consciousness seemed to lose control of my body. Before my vision faded, I saw Daisy's face, twisted with madness, her eyes bulging, and her smile terrifying. On the small screen, James's worry and helpless anger were evident.
James.
My lips moved, but no sound came out. Then the world plunged into endless darkness.
Congratulations, host, on successfully completing the possessive male lead strategy plan. James's strategy progress is 100%.
It was 007's macho voice, filled with undisguised joy. I was a bit dazed, feeling that everything was surreal.
How did the task suddenly get completed?
Not only is this your first time completing such a significant task, but it's also a milestone in my career.
The space fell silent, and 007 sensed something was wrong with me.
Host.
How did the task suddenly get completed? I felt my eyes sting, knowing tears were welling up.
007 silently transmitted James's activities of the day into my mind. James's actions appeared before me. In the image, James was looking down at a diamond ring in his hand. The ring was huge, its sparkle hurting my eyes. I watched James smile as he held the ring, and I smiled in the darkness. The act of smiling tugged at my eyes, causing tears to fall one after another. James placed the ring in his chest pocket, patting it gently, his careful demeanor making my heart ache. I saw James go to a flower shop, ordering many flowers. He meticulously selected each one, arranging them into a bouquet himself. On the card, he wrote, "You are the moonlight that shines on the path of my life." I was the brightest moonlight in his life, encompassing the sun's warmth and outshining the stars. I saw the flowers fall from his hands to the ground, petals scattering, no longer as vibrant as before. James sat in his car, screaming my name into the empty screen, while I responded over and over, but he couldn't hear me at all.
007, I want to see James.
I couldn't stop trembling, the urgency making my heart ache and my breathing difficult.
Master, we've completed the task, and the points have been awarded.
As a string of code, 007 couldn't understand my thoughts. He was merely curious why I wanted to stay after completing my job.
I want to see James.
Master, if you go back, you'll only have a month, and the points reward will be halved.
That's fine.
Points could be earned again, but James had suffered too much. I wanted him to experience more happiness. At least, I had promised him. 007 said no more, but I felt a pull, similar to when I had arrived in this world while reading that book. Before I lost consciousness, a smile tugged at my lips, and the last tear fell as my senses faded. Slowly, my consciousness returned.
Mr. James, Miss Emily has at most a month to live.
As soon as my consciousness returned to my body, I heard a stranger's voice.
I understand.
It was James's voice, devoid of warmth, but I detected a tremor.
James.
My throat felt like it was tearing apart. I struggled to call his name. I only had a month left. I wanted to spend as much time with him as possible.
Emily!
His voice was filled with shock and joy. I saw James's eyes, framed by gold-rimmed glasses, turn red instantly. He maneuvered his wheelchair to my side, leaning forward eagerly. I guessed he was frustrated with the wheelchair's slow speed. The water temperature was just right. He could only hand me the cup, as his height in the wheelchair wasn't suitable for feeding me. I obediently took it, noticing the sadness in his eyes. My throat felt much better after the water. The wound on my stomach still hurt a bit. I slowly moved closer to him, resting my chin on his shoulder.
When will we get married?
Tomorrow.
My answer made him pause. I didn't have much time left. At first, I wondered if marrying him, knowing I would soon disappear, would affect him. But considering his personality, I thought it would be better to spend my remaining time with him in a more meaningful way.
Our wedding was held in the garden behind the hospital. Both of us were in wheelchairs, exchanging rings and sharing a real kiss amidst the blessings. The details of the wedding might fade with time, but the sunlight and James's smile at that moment would stay with me forever.
I only have a month left. Do you regret it?
Emily, in this lifetime, I only recognize you. Thank you for accepting my flaws, my unworthiness, for pulling me out of the mire, and giving life to the 27-year-old James. Listen, this heart beats for you. You are my treasure, my everything. Having you makes me happier than I can express. My only regret is not meeting you sooner.
What? So you could have met me earlier and made me wash dishes for you?
James immediately deflated, like a pitiful puppy.
How much for 21 dishes, Mr. James?
One moment I was being cheeky, and the next, my hands were pinned down as James pressed me firmly beneath him.
Ouch.
I had forgotten that this guy was a troubled soul. Something cool and soft touched my lips, and before I could react, James pulled away.
A kiss.
Seeing James's reddened ears, I couldn't help but chuckle. The 27-year-old James, who handled everything with decisiveness and fearlessness, became adorably innocent in such moments. I couldn't hold back. With a swift move, I flipped over, pinning James down and straddling his waist.
Sometimes, a girl has to take the initiative.